I'm really appreciative of that.
Kina, anything from you?
No, I'm good, thanks.
All right. Okay, so three, two. Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Family Reflections. I'm Keddy, and
I'm Kina.
we're still working on the intro. Okay, this was the first
Yeah.
run. We're working on the intro, but we'll get it right. Okay. Today we're joined in this Family Reflections episode by Mr. Rennie, Robert Rennie. Can you just tell the people hello, sir?
I'm hearing you. Yeah. I'm hearing you now.
Okay, so just give the people a quick introduction to yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Rennie. What can I say about myself briefly? I'm a teacher by profession. I love the arts. I am also an avid advocate for um, youth and social issues that affect youth, or rather, I should say, an advocate for better social construct or fabric for our young people. So that's pretty much what I do. I'm the president of the South Castries Youth and Sports Council, and also the chairperson of the NYC Arts and Culture Committee. So that's pretty much what I do, on a daily basis.
All right, and we're glad to have you with us today. Folks, I'm going to be honest with you. This episode might be a little sad, okay? And sometimes we have to talk about things that are a little serious because they need to be talked about, and that's why this
Yeah.
show is here.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about something that does not get a lot of press, and even when it does, I don't feel like it is treated with the level of brevity that it should be. We're talking about men's suicide today, right? So I'm going to tell you something very quickly. When I was growing up, um, I would hear about these instances on the news of men drinking Zone, right? And it happened so often that Zone became synonymous with men killing themselves, right?
Right.
Like it was such a common occurrence that the pesticide became synonymous with this thing happening. And so I think it's high time that we really sit down and talk about this and talk about why so many of our Caribbean men have resorted to that solution to the pains and trials of this life. So I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion. Guys, this episode might be a little shorter than usual, but we're going to try our best to really dive into this topic. So, Kina, you have anything to say to the listeners before we really dive in?
Yeah, so I'm glad that we're doing this episode now. As most people may know, World Suicide Prevention Day is actually Thursday, the 10th of September. So we're coming to that day, and I think it is very important that we have this discussion now.
Right. Robert, is there anything that you'd like to say just off the top on the topic?
Well, yeah, I'm happy that we have decided to touch on this issue. In a lot of the reading that I've done on suicide, or even my own experiences with individuals who have completed suicide that I may know, it happened to men. I think it is so refreshing when I hear individuals interested in talking about issues that these men, because men often, our society now is so geared, so prone to talking about issues like women, and to forget men actually go through a lot of issues as well. We just agree that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
The first thing I want to dive into, and I think it's important to talk about this first because it then sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. Is suicide a mental illness, or is it someone just making a decision? Because growing up, when I was growing up, suicide was never really talked about as a mental illness. Especially when it comes to men, it was almost kind of comical because some people would say,
Right.
"Oh, Monsieur Chwekoi, a woman give me
Mhm.
stress like Monsieur Pankoi," and
Yeah.
it was almost like, okay, this man just wasn't strong enough, right? This is just a person that wasn't strong, right? So is suicide a mental illness, or is it just a person making a decision? What are your thoughts?
Um, no, actually, from what I've come to understand, it is not a mental illness. People who can contemplate suicide, um, they're not crazy people. It's usually just ordinary people who find themselves at an impasse that they believe it's very difficult for them to handle, whether it be a physical pain, whether it be an emotional pain. It's literally very ordinary people who are not who are not going through um, who are not crazy, as some people may tend to believe or to suggest. So, um, I mean, depression may be considered a mental illness, and of course, sometimes suicide is a byproduct of that. But to see that they're, yeah, to say that they're crazy or no, no, ordinary people who just go through a difficult period in their life, um, are usually are usually people who contemplate suicide.
Having a mental illness does increase your risk of committing suicide. And like you said, depression is a form of mental illness, and going through depression, it will actually be a risk factor for suicide.
Right. So
And I mean, even in 2013, if we have to go according to the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, if we go according to that, then we could say, okay, maybe not. Recently, they did revise it, and there is actually a definition for suicidal behavior. So, suicidal behavior disorder is now defined within the DSM-5. But it's queer for me because it actually highlights that you would have to have attempted suicide within the past 2 years for you to be under that behavior. That is part of the definition. So it's a bit weird in
so
that regard.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, they're basically saying that it's an illness only after you've attempted.
Well, according to the definition of suicidal behavior. So we have suicidal behavior, and that behavior would have to be void of suicidal ideation, which is basically suicidal thoughts. So according to that definition for suicidal behavior disorder, it's saying that you would have had to attempt suicide within the past 2 years, and you would have to be void of suicidal ideation.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to reconcile both of your responses against the stigma surrounding suicide. Um,
Mhm.
very often, when people hear, and I'm specifically referring to men, when people hear of a man that attempted to commit suicide, uh, it's even in the very way that we speak about suicide. We don't say someone who uh, attempted suicide. We say someone who attempted to commit suicide, right? In the very language, we have the acknowledgement that this thing is a sin that this person tried to commit, right?
Mhm.
Um, Now, in the history surrounding suicide, there was a time where um, suicide wasn't really seen as such a bad thing, and I think in a lot of European countries, you have, I know a lot of people who have terminal illnesses decide to take their death into their own hands. And
Mhm.
that growing trend, is that something that is worrisome, or is that something that you guys see as beneficial to addressing the problem in the long term?
Are we looking at? Are you looking at the act of suicide from all of these other factors that we've already touched upon, and you're comparing it to someone with a terminal illness wanting to take their own life?
No,
are we looking at it from a okay?
no. I'm not saying it's a favorable thing. In fact, I'm not putting the two in the same boat. I'm saying that
Okay.
generally worldwide there
Mhm.
is a growing empathy towards suicide victims, right? And
Mhm.
is that empathy useful to solving the problem?
Um,
I
yeah,
yeah, go ahead, Robert.
I think it's helpful. At the end of the day, you look at any particular social ill, um, and it is not until people become um, empathetic, until they understand, until they recognize that, hey, this is an issue, until they put themselves in the shoes of the individuals who who are experiencing the social ill. Even let's you take it out of suicide, you go to racism and what's happening right now with the entire world. People around the world are starting to feel that, and open their eyes to the injustices that um, black people are facing all over the world. And so when people start to understand and accept the fact that people who complete suicides are actually going through or are experiencing difficult emotional or difficult physical pain, they would not, nothing will be done about it. But the mere fact that people are starting to talk and say, hey, listen, people are going through a lot of things, let's try to understand what they're going through, um, um, let's empathize with them, or sympathize with the families. It we will not experience change. So I think that any sort of empathy towards suicide or people who experience suicide is a positive thing.
It is, but are we really being empathetic? I,
Well,
Mm,
I have heard comments in St. Lucia, I've heard a lot of comments, and up until recently, of people making statements that they're not attending a funeral because the person committed suicide. That is not really empathetic.
right.
well
Generally,
well mm,
mhm,
if I may interject, I'm the
mhm,
thing is, we also live in a society that is, statistically we might say that we're 90% Christian and whatnot. And what you find happening is in the Christian context, people believe, as Ketty said a while ago, that people believe that suicide is a sin. That
mhm.
individuals who go through that, a lot of people, some people may be fanatic, if you want to call it that, but some of them may say, boy, these people going to hell. And so that is not empathy. That's being judgmental, right? It's not empathy. So it's somewhat different than being empathetic. And being empathetic is placing yourself in a situation, um, and it's almost feeling what the person felt. That is so. I would say in these two scenarios would be somewhat different. Being judgmental is actually one of the things that we must not do when dealing with suicide. um even when you're trying to approach someone to speak about the issue, one of the first things you're told not to do is to show any level of being judgmental. If you want a person to open up, and if you want a person to speak to you, you want a person to talk to you, the last thing you want to do is to ridicule or to be judgmental or any of that thing. So I think people who stay away from churches and or funerals and whatnot are actually being somewhat judgmental, which is again one of the things you are prohibited um, from doing.
Right. Is that sort of the stream of thought that you were about to express, Kina?
Um, Not necessarily. I was just looking at it. I'm not saying that we are empathetic, and being empathetic is a positive thing. I'm just bringing reality check in to the fact that there are a lot of people in our society who are still not empathetic, and we're not saying that it's being judgmental and it's being empathetic. It is the fact that you're being judgmental means you're not being empathetic. And
Mhm.
for example, a young man takes his life. We are quick to condemn and say, yes, we may go to a funeral, we may be empathetic, but then generally we're like, oh, ni se che kwa for a femme. You know, we make comments, we make statements that are not being a true reflection of our empathy. So that's why I'm saying, are we really being empathetic?
Yeah. And I think I'm gonna be the bad guy to come in and say the answer is no to that. And I think that is something that as a society and as a culture we can work together to change. And of course we're on this in this conversation we can talk about solutions to changing the culture surrounding conversations of suicide, especially male suicide. But before we hop into that, I just wanted to touch on the fact that a lot of male suicides seem to surround some sort of romantic heartbreak,
Mm-hmm.
and something of that sort. Why does it seem like men are more likely than women, and to not survive a GoPro, right? As we call it, it's English. uh, like, why is it that?
Yes.
Because I don't often hear a lot of I know there are women that have done so, but you don't hear it as often for women, where they take their own lives after a breakup or a broken heart.
Right.
Yeah, our society, we do not teach our men to embrace emotions. We
Right.
believe that it is a form of weakness to speak about heartbreak. You had to be macho. You had to be, yeah, she'll leave you, so what? Kind of thing. But the truth is, in most instances, we are deeply hurting, and so um, it's you look at women are, and some people may say they are designed um to better handle emotions. And so if we teach our young men from a very early age that it is okay to cry, right? We don't teach that. We don't teach that it is okay to, you know, it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to talk about it, because that's one of the things that we don't do. We don't talk about what we feel when somebody breaks our heart. And if we talk about it, we don't express the true emotion that we feel. We talk about it in a certain sense that you still want to show your machoism, if you want to call it that. Um, but but I think that's what it is. If we teach people to embrace their emotions, um, and of course you also have the men who committed suicide, and it's not that because of a woman per se, and even that you can see that it stems from them bottling things inside. They believe that, what, let me just deal with my issues by myself. Let me not talk about it. Let me not, um, yeah, and so sometimes the family members miss these triggers. So it's important also as a society to look for things like that when men decide to become more reclusive, when they decide to pull back, when they decide to put themselves in isolation. Something is happening, something is going on, and we miss it because we don't pay attention. Um yeah, I definitely believe that's one of the root of the issues, that we don't teach our men to embrace their emotions and talk about their issues,
All right.
because they
And
believe it's a sign of weakness.
yeah, and I want to give your
Very well
response there.
said.
Yeah, Kina, I'll give you the floor in just a bit, but I just want to give your response there some legs, right? Let's say I was with Ruth, right? And Ruth and I just broke up. And I am broken. I am completely obliterated. I don't even exist anymore, right? I would go to my partners and say, yeah, boy, Ruth and I just break up there, Yeah, yeah, it mess up, eh? And that's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it. There's nothing
yeah,
else you can
yeah,
say.
yeah,
It mess up, eh? And,
Yeah, because then if you go beyond that, they might ridicule you a bit.
exactly. You'll be,
exactly.
you'll
You,
be, well, you'll be the laughing stock of the town. Or if adventure you say
Yeah.
that's a wow, that's a that really hit me, boy, is really hurt me. Just saying, just making statement alone.
Go
Missed you.
well.
Why? See that you guys are, you
Yeah,
start
man.
getting ready.
Now,
Yes.
yeah. So, Kina, I want to hear your thoughts on this as a
Well,
woman.
I like what Robert said, and he put it well. And I will tell you this, male emotional repression is a very serious thing because from back in the day, from times of slavery, colonial times, men were trained not to express their emotion, as he said. And that has had some serious consequences for us in society. You go through a relationship, something happens, you'll break up, and you're just meant to bottle everything up. You may end up going to a bar having a couple drinks, but then the reality of that heartbreak is still there the next day. And there is nobody around that you can talk to because, like we're saying, your friends might ridicule you if you express yourself too much. Um, you're not supposed to talk about it, so you can't say, let me go talk to somebody about it. And even the talking aspect of it, talk therapy, even that in its sense is looked frowned upon for men to go to a therapist. Men are not,
Mhm.
seen as somebody to go talk their feelings over anything or talk it out. So all of these things have their consequences in society, and this is why we find a lot of men, modern women, are committing suicide, and it's unfortunate.
All right. So, for any of the guys watching this episode, let me ask you a question. Right? When was the last time you told one of your best friends, your best male friends, yeah, bro, I love you, you know?
Mm. Mm.
You're not gonna
And
get that happening.
yeah, and I want to
Yeah.
challenge you. If you can do it this next week, because you say you man, right? If you can do it this next week, check one of your partners and
Yeah.
say, yeah, bro, I love you, you know, bro. And don't laugh it off. Don't make
Yeah.
it a
You
joke.
see,
Fellas will be looking at you weird,
again,
Kenny. Fellas will be
again
looking
in
at
the
you weird.
Caribbean. Yeah, in the Caribbean, uh, or
Context.
culture, if I may say.
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't because now you see, of course, we are having the rise in people coming out in terms of embracing homosexuality as a lifestyle.
Right.
Um, Men are not, or heterosexual men are not. They are made to feel that making a statement like that to another male is you is causing people, or would cause people to question your sexuality.
All right.
Right.
And so as a result of that, men refrain from becoming that sensitive. And so anytime you display any measure of sensitivity, anytime you display any measure of that of compassion, if you want to call it, are you seen again as are you really straight? That's the
All
next
right.
question
All
that
right.
people
All right.
might ask. Are you really straight? You come in and tell another man, "Gas, I love you," and them thing, and boy, your partner would be like, "Gas, gas, I'm new, gas, that kind of thing."
It's
But
true.
Right.
unless again, I think we have to, as a society, change um the mindset and change how we think, because it is okay to tell people, tell your mate that, hey bro, I love you and I really appreciate you. When the person dies, we on the or we are the funeral and we saying all types of thing, and hey, that was a really good friend and all but we are not taught to say that while the person is actually alive, because we are afraid of all these little
Mhm.
these little factors.
Yeah. And I
So yeah,
absolutely.
we
Oh, go ahead.
it goes down to, let's teach our men that expressing themselves and expressing their emotion is not a sign of weakness. It would not emasculate you, but in fact it would to make you a well-rounded individual, a more holistic individual, rather than have that stigma, and that sort of thing.
All right. And I want to take that and run with it a little bit because I also think that for a lot of men, and I see the reason that a lot of men commit suicide at the end of a relationship is because they just lost the only place that they could genuinely express and feel appreciated, feel love and feel loved, and get words of affirmation, and get say things that are on their hearts. Because for a Caribbean man, oftentimes the only person you can really be vulnerable with, the only person you can really confide in on a very intimate level, and I'm not saying that you should confide with your partners on the same intimate level as your girl, but at the same time, if she is the only person that you have, the only person you can really talk to, the only person that you get words of affirmation and love from, then when you lose that person, or in many cases, it has been instances where the person was caught cheating on you, and now you just got betrayed by this one source of love. There's nothing else. You can't turn to your partners, you can't turn to your friends. You just lost the only thing you had. Okay? And then that's why you see a lot of the guys kill themselves, because there's nothing else. There's nowhere else to turn.
Yeah, but what about this other factor that the even within the North American context, and even in the Caribbean context, we have a lot of young men who grew up without fathers. And so the men who are supposed to, from time these boys are young, express that type of emotion to them and say, son, I love you. Not, being deprived of that from a very early age. Or being deprived of that from the time you're a child into it is foreign to you. Right? It is foreign to you. But if we had more nuclear families where mothers and fathers were in the homes, and the fathers were playing the role of fathers by actually expressing to their sons that, hey, son, I love you, they would know from a very early age that it is okay to hear a man say I love you to another male without thinking of it in the context of homosexuality.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a nuclear home for you to learn that, because we're also looking at, you could have a single parent family and you have a brother sibling. It has to do with socialization. So it starts from the home. Right. It's how you're socialized to deal with emotion, how you're socialized to express your feelings. So we could see that with a sibling relationship. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you have to be in a nuclear home, right? And you would even find out with a single parent that, yes, it's mostly mothers.
Tell you what. Even
so let me just add a little bit of nuance here, right? I also believe that as much as it is important to fight against emotional repression, at the same time that we do so, it's possible to be free to express yourself while also maintaining the level of emotional intelligence to know when not to do so and when to just hold on for a little bit. For example, as a father, right? Your mom just died, and you go home, you tell your wife, you tell your children. If you just break down on the floor in front of everybody, you just break down in front of your children see you as a source of strength. Your children see you as a source of security. And so them seeing you in such a vulnerable state, just a mess on the floor with snot coming from your nose and everything, that might be a little traumatizing for them. So you have to have a level of emotional intelligence to say, okay, let me just hold on. Let me go to the room with my wife, or let me go to the bathroom and let me bawl my eyes out there, right? So as much as we should not be emotionally repressed, we also should be emotionally intelligent as well. Can you guys agree?
I'm not sure I agree with that, to be honest.
I'm not agreeing.
I think...
All right, that's fine. Let's go. What are your thoughts?
No, because you're saying that. I understand what you're saying, but then at the same time, you're also encouraging the behavior.
No,
because you're telling me that this man cannot be vulnerable to his kids. So if the kids don't grow up with seeing their male figure being vulnerable, who are they going to see it from? Where are they going to learn to be vulnerable?
I completely see your point.
I mean, he's not going to be snorting all over, screaming all over the place and, bawling out. Like he is allowed to be emotionally vulnerable in front of his children. Daddy is a Superman, but then daddy has emotions. You understand?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
because of daddy, I know it is okay for me to cry.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the
So,
best
so
example
Kenny,
to
I
know
think you're
what it
alone in
is to
this
be
one.
vulnerable.
Okay. Okay. Let me tell you. I guess from my perspective, as I guess for me, I'm still on a learning journey when it comes to where strength ends and where
Weakness.
vulnerability is also
Mhm.
strength. Right? I'm still on my
Yeah.
learning journey when it comes to that. And now that I considered what you guys are saying, I
Yeah, but you
agree
see,
that
but does that? Mhm.
for me, like I'll tell
Yeah,
you for
but
myself,
the
right?
strength, you see.
Yeah, for myself, I would have a difficult time doing that in front of my children, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
because of my own socialization and my own culture, like I can't reconcile, crying, full bawling in front of my children, and they seeing daddy
Right,
crying.
because we don't see that, and like because we
It's
don't see
taboo.
that. You see, and even with what you just said in terms of where strength ends and where vulnerability, begins or whatnot. Why does vulnerability and strength have to be something separate? Why
Right.
can't
Different
they
ends of the
be?
spectrum.
Why can't you be? Yeah, why can't you still be strong even in vulnerability? Why can't
Right.
vulnerability even be a sign of strength? As you understand?
Right.
So
Yeah.
Right.
so so again, yes, it takes a recalibrating of the mind, right, to help people understand that yeah, crying is not a sign of weakness.
Right.
You understand? Crying is not a sign of weakness.
Right.
It is not, being sensitive is not a sign of weakness. But in actuality, if we're honest with ourselves, you have to be strong. You understand? To be able to reach out to it,
Mhm.
inside of you and express these emotions. It is actually a sign of strength. You
Right.
It
understand? And so
it does
unless
take
we
a
can
strong
we can
person to break
change that
down.
mindset, right? We will not. Right. You know, it takes a strong person to embrace the fact that, hey, I feel overwhelmed. And listen, I want to cry and I'm going to cry. That's just what it is. That's what I feel right now.
Mhm.
And I'm going to embrace it.
Mhm.
This is what
Right.
it is.
Right.
That is actually a sign of strength. So,
All right.
so yeah, so that if we can teach our children that. So that's why I completely agree with Kina. That's actually what I was going to say. That here is this male figure. Um, Having to show his children that it is okay to cry. And I
Right.
can tell you, my father committed suicide, right? And to be to in my entire adult life, I had probably never shed a tear, right? And I cried like a baby. You understand? During that experience. And one of the things I think caused me to cry as well is because um I always wanted to have that type of relationship with my father, where my father, um, where it was more than just, hey, hi son, hello son, this and that. All these things we were talking about earlier, that men don't show their children certain things. They don't show. My father was a farmer, never taught me how to plant. My father was a farmer, or sorry, my father, of course, um, never never taught me about how to deal with relationships. There are so many things I realized that I did not learn from my father. And I felt like at that particular point where I saw him hanging there in the threshold of the house, I realized I will never have that moment again. Right? I will never, you know, see my father cry about a situation that he's going through. I will never have, a father explaining to you, hey, this is what you should do in a relationships, and when you meet girls, and this is how you conduct yourself. Never had any of that. And at that moment I realized, um, you know, it's okay to cry.
Yeah.
It's okay to cry. Big hard back. People call me a big hard back man, but
Right. Right.
I cry like a baby. So
No, it
yeah,
is okay to
these things
cry.
are important.
Yeah.
Yeah, these things
Because
are important.
Kelly, I'm wondering, I know a lot of men who literally be crying over a football match. They don't care who's around, they will cry. But you're telling me it's not okay. You're saying that the person's mother died and it's
Right.
not okay for you to break down.
All right.
I don't get the reasoning behind that.
I
But
guess
I
in.
want.
Oh,
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, I just wanted to zone in on what Robert was saying and actually ask him what how okay were you the one that found your father hanging from the
No, my brother found him. At that
okay.
time, I was living in Castries, and I'm originally from Lacomengo.
Okay.
Actually, back at Lacomengo, no. But what happened was my brother found him because my brother
Oh.
was literally living right next to him. And it was a day after our birthday, right?
Mm,
And my brother realized, but wait a minute, I haven't seen, my father, for the day,
mhm,
and he just happened and he realized where my father lived was dark. It was like after 6, well, it was about 7. But by 6 o'clock, he usually puts his light on.
mhm,
So my brother said, "Hey, let me go and check on him." And when in fact, the door I believe was opened, and he put on his little light from his phone. And as soon as he put on the light from his phone, it literally shone on his face hanging in the threshold of the house. And so he screamed. And then I remember his wife saying that is when she heard the way that my brother screamed, right? That was what she just began to cry. She just began to say no and start crying because she had never heard my brother express that type of no and that type of emotion, because she heard it in his voice that definitely something is wrong. And
mhm,
so I got a call. Well, they didn't want to tell me exactly what happened. I just got a call saying that, or rather, they called my wife at the time and said to her, um, just tell Robert that he needs to come up to the house, something like that. They didn't want to tell me exactly what happened, and so when I got there, my brother was just quiet, and I just came to the house, and then I saw him hanging there as well. And of course, I was a bit stunned, to be honest. Um, and I just stayed there, just just in total shock. And then I went to the other side of the house and I just started crying, because like I said, there were a lot of things that I was really hoping um, to experience with my father, before he died. And I realized that at that point, all that was definitely taken away from me. Um, and I was like, I had a conversation with him like I think a few days before at a funeral, and I did not see the triggers. I didn't see the signs. Right? He tried his hardest to to hide the signs from us, but then other some of his other friends saw the signs. But again, a lot of us men are not emotionally, or we're not equipped to seeing the signs. So we just bypass it, because he went to his friend's house and he said to his friend the day before, "Hey, you're not going to see me anymore. You're not going to see me for a while, right? So all that you have some tools home. Just come and take your tools, man. You know." So his friend never realized what he was saying. His friend didn't, say that, "Hey, boy, you really and true, you're just not going to see me, period." And so he never, he only, of course, after the news went out that he had committed suicide, people started to realize that, hey, that's what was really going on. He was basically saying goodbye in his own way, you know. And yeah, since then I have become very, I have tried to be very aware. I try to pay attention to my friends, and when they are going through difficult times. COVID is also providing us an opportunity to be vigilant, because we know St. Lucia so far has had about 7 suicides already,
yeah.
and we know that a lot of people are experiencing a lot of difficult times, and so in the country now is almost, we must be at a heightened alert, a state of heightened alert, and be observant, be vigilant of the way our friends behave around us. Are they going in isolation? What's really happening to them, and that sort of thing. So it has made me very sensitive to people who commit suicides, or people complete suicides, or families who experience or families dealing with suicide. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely, I want to thank you for sharing that story. I hope to some degree that story can spur some action on the part of some men out there to be better friends. Let's form better support systems for one
Yeah.
another. Um, and definitely, I agree with both of you that there is strength in vulnerability, and I also agree with you that I was wrong for my for my statement of what the father should do there. And you have to understand that comes from my own experience as a Caribbean man. In my own experience, there have been times where at the end of a relationship or something, I haven't been able to process those emotions. I don't know what to do with it. I just know the only thing I know how to do is say, Irie, I safe man, I
Yeah.
safe man,
Yeah.
and you just try to shrug that off,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Right.
I've learned along the way that is not how you deal with those things. You have to allow yourself to feel through it, allow yourself to process these traumas. And I hope on your end, Robert, that in
Mhm.
practice you try your best to process this as best as you can.
Yeah.
And I hope that this episode can provide some sort of split call to action on the
Yeah.
part of not only the men in society but the women as well, to encourage our Caribbean men to be more vulnerable, to encourage them to be more emotionally honest. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. Kina and Robert know that we're already got a very tight schedule today. I really feel that we didn't completely run through this topic. So I don't know if there's some possibility that we might be able to do a part two or something along those lines.
Two.
But
Yeah. For sure.
um,
Yeah,
uh,
hopefully.
yeah,
For sure.
I really feel like we haven't exhausted this topic. But
Sure.
definitely thank you for sharing your experience there, Robert. Kina, as always, is awesome. And guys, thank you for joining us. We will see you on the next episode of Family Reflections. Reflections. All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.